Yesterday, it was the inaugural 12-team college football playoff ranking reveal, as Eddie Garcia pointed out. And your top 12 is as follows: Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Miami, Texas, Penn State, Tennessee, Indiana, BYU, in Notre Dame at 10, Alabama 11, and Boise State at 12. And then there were these projections that came out, and we had kind of thrown out like, man, what if? Just what if we could get ourselves Notre Dame, Penn State in Happy Valley in the first round.
Well, wonderful. Yeah, wasn't that based on what I predicted was going to be this ranking?
And it looks like at least we're on track after 1 week to potentially get that, which is all I want from this college football playoff. I want to live that life.
I mean, you would assume, because both for Penn State and Notre Dame, they actually should win out. They'll be favored, I believe, in every single game from here on out this season. And that should make for at least them to both be able to kind of hold their course of where they're going. I do want to touch on this, though, because I want to reiterate something that I think a lot of people are confused by. And look, I even people who work in the business are confused by this. So the top 12 teams that you get may not be the top 12 teams that actually make it into the college football playoff. That's the first thing I'll say, and I'll explain that in a second. The next thing is the top 4 teams will not be the top 4 teams that receive buys. I want to make that very clear so people understand that. The language within the College Football Playoff Committee in the agreement is the 4 highest ranked conference champions. So as of right now, for example, Oregon's at 1, Ohio State's at 2, Georgia's at 3, Miami's at 4. Ohio State and Oregon are both in the Big Ten. Let's say those two square off and Oregon wins. They won the last time. Let's say they win again. They're the higher ranked team. Ohio State, if they were ranked in the top 4, would not receive a bye. They would be the 5th seed. That's the highest they could be. So, for example, if the playoff was to start today based on these rankings, you'd have Oregon with a bye representing the Big Ten, Georgia with a bye representing the SEC as the number 2 seed, Miami with a bye representing the ACC as the 3 seed, and then you'd have to go all the way down to BYU at number 9, who would be the 4 seed, who would get a bye for presumably winning the Big 12. Now, the next team, and there's not really any controversy in this regard because Boise State, we're assuming they'd be the group of 5 highest ranked conference champion. They would be in as part of the playoff, but they would be a 12 seed in this case. So does that make sense? Like, even though BYU is a 9 seed, if they went out and win the Big 12, they would jump to a 4 seed and get a bye. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Here's one other scenario that people need to understand too, that I don't know that they do. BYU sitting at 9, Boise State's sitting at 12. Let's say BYU loses a game, still wins the Big 12 championship. And let's just happen to say Boise State wins out. They win the Mountain West. There's a chance Boise State could be ranked higher than BYU. Boise State could then be that 4th team that ends up getting a bye. Now, it's highly unlikely, okay? The last 10 years we've done the college football playoff, there's only been one team to make the group of 4, and that was Cincinnati. So it's highly unlikely that the College Football Playoff Committee would look at Boise State's schedule and say, it's more difficult, higher strength of schedule. We feel like this team is better than the Big 12 champ. But it is a possibility. So not a lot of people realize that. I think they look at the top 12, they're like, this is the group that goes in. That's not how this works. And especially it doesn't work in regards to the buys for the top 4 teams that will move on to play in the second round.
I'll say this. The projected one that the college football playoff predictor for the bracket, that it looks really amazing right now.
Yeah.
It looks, let me tell you, that's going to be one hell of a playoff. I can't even imagine what the ratings are going to be for these games, bro. I think the excitement of them being home games, I think the intrigue of what it represents, regardless of anything, I think this is the one year where if you just cannot continue, like, based off of what you're saying, too. Like, you just can't continue to say after this year, you didn't get it right. You can't do it. Like, you can't do it. It's too many teams where if you miss the playoff, you missed the playoff. Come back next year, try to do it again.
I'm way more excited about the college football playoff than the NFL playoffs, and it's not even close.
Bruh, I mean, looking at that bracket, that's super exciting.
Let's just compare the two leagues, too, okay? There's way more parity in college football with the number of times we've seen a number one seed, for example, be upset, unseeded, right? We saw that with Georgia. We saw that with Texas. We saw Alabama earlier this season. We've seen Tennessee. Tennessee got knocked off by Arkansas. We saw Ohio State in a tight battle with Oregon. They get knocked off. They get leapfrogged. So there's been examples of the parity that exists within college football, especially when you got a team like Vandy that, unfortunately, is not ranked within the top 25. However, was able to upset and has had an unbelievable season for their standards in the SEC play and knocking off Alabama. SMU, I'm not sure people, knew just how good SMU could be in the ACC this year, given they're moving from a group of 5 moving up. They're 8-1. They're knocking on the door at being a part of this. And who knows, maybe they've got an outside shot of winning the ACC when it's all said and done. So there's, to me, a lot of intrigue and a lot of anticipation for what this playoff is going to look like. I think the atmosphere, I think everything else you're talking about. And if I'm the NFL, I'm not like concerned. The NFL is the NFL. It's a behemoth. But if I was going to say to you right now, which one has the better chance to grow and to continue to grow?
Easily.
It's easily college football as compared to the NFL. The only thing the NFL has going for it in comparison to from a ratings perspective is really obviously the larger markets. So more people tend to tune in and watch. But I think not to make it like a political reference here, but I think as you look at the way college football could infiltrate some of those bigger markets, those big cities, and if you could find more fandom there and people would find it more intriguing, that's when if you're the NFL and you see a ratings plateau, you kind of go, all right, maybe we need to figure this out. Maybe we need to figure out what's unique about college football that we don't have. I mean, I could distinctly tell you this, like the atmosphere is 1,000 times better at a college football game than at an NFL game. Yeah. It just is. Like the tailgating, the experience, the band, the tradition, all the stuff that goes along with it that makes every school unique to it. You don't really have that in a professional franchise. And I think the other thing is there tends to be a bit more stability. I'm not saying there's a ton, but you look at some of the underperforming programs like, Florida State, for example, this year. I don't think they're moving on from Mike Norvell. The buyout's too big. There'll be more. If this is an NFL team and Florida State, he'd been out of there 3 games ago.
Yeah.
So, I'm like you guys. I can't wait. I hope and pray. I think for us, for our show, selfishly, Penn State Notre Dame would be awesome.
That would be dope.
And by the way, selfishly, I'd love for Notre Dame to host one. I really thought at the beginning of the season their floor was 11-1, and I thought that might be good enough to get them in to hosting a playoff game in the playoff. But now the strength of the schedule is so weak, and with that one loss to NIU, I just don't know how much ground they can make up in the playoff committee's mind. So because of that, I think they'll make it in. But unfortunately now, the loss to NIU will keep them from hosting one and instead going to a place like Happy Valley, which, again, I've said it before, say it again. There's 2 places, Neyland and then obviously Happy Valley. Like those are the 2 most unbelievable college football stadiums, experiences, that all of that. And hell, it'd be a shame. It would actually be a shame if Penn State and Tennessee had to play each other because we would be all robbed of not having those 2 venues potentially in play for hosting one. That would be the biggest crime, I think, if those 2 teams had to square off in the first round.
I just interviewed Jack Kaiser yesterday.
What up, Kaiser?
He's up for
How'd that come
Campbell.
about?
He's up for. I do a show for National Football
Foundation. Okay,
and he's up for the Campbell Award. Super impressive dude, man.
Yeah, he's a hell of a young man, man.
Yeah, super impressive dude. I love linebackers. I love me some linebackers, man. But Dude was very, very impressive, man. So I enjoyed talking with him yesterday.
The first-round college football playoff dates are December 20th and the 21st. So the 20th is that Friday, and then the 21st on the Saturday. The NFL games going on are Houston at KC and then Pittsburgh at Baltimore. So there's a lot of good football taking place that weekend. But still, even those matchups, dude, I'll take college football in the first round. First ever playoffs at home sites.
That energy is going to be crazy, man.
We need Notre Dame, Penn State. Got to happen.
That'd be crazy.
It's got to happen.